Joe Biden's Secretary of State is trying to warn his staff about the dangers of misgendering. According to a February 5th memo obtained by the National Review, Antony Blinken cautioned against problematic gender terms like brave men and women or ladies and gentlemen. He suggested gender-neutral terms instead, brave first responders or folks. The State Department spokesman got asked about this nonsense.
It's a standard government practice to try to encourage people to be respectful of others and use the terms that with which others are comfortable.
Well, I mean, does the secretary or anyone else in the building have an issue with the phrase "ladies and gentlemen"?
I do not have. I do not have any problem with the term "ladies and gentlemen," and I feel fully confident saying the secretary does not either.
All right, Charlie, so why promote a far-left agenda and in this activism in the State Department when we've got wars raging in Ukraine and Gaza?
I'm actually kind of impressed. That was pretty bold to say that he didn't have a problem with saying ladies and gentlemen. Right. That was quite a stand. No, it's all so absurd. It's all so ridiculous. And the point of it is the absurdity. If you I don't know if anybody watches this movie, The Hunger Games, but all the government leaders in The Hunger Games are so ridiculous. The opulence is ridiculous and absurd. And at some point, but that becomes the point. And when you listen to these debates, when you have so many important things going on around the world and in our own country, and you have a president talking about junk fees and shrinkflation and all this idiotic nonsense, it's there. It should be a signal to us. They have no ideas. They're out of ideas, and they don't care.
You know, Dana, the concept of, or the threat, they call it, of misgendering, the State Department actually is allowing therapy sessions for people within the State Department because apparently there was an email that went out to everyone and they misgendered a few people, and now we're paying for therapy for people in the State Department.
I go back to 2015 or 2016, and President Trump was at a rally of some sort, maybe not a huge rally, but like it was early days. And one of the things he said was, political correctness is killing our country. And he got a standing ovation. And I remember that moment sticks in my mind because it is things like this that remind everyone of why he said something like that. And the State Department might say, oh, it's just a little memo, not a big deal. Like, what is everybody talking about? No, this is getting into the minds of everyone that is the recipient of the memo. And a lot of those people are moms and dads. Mm-hmm. And they also have sons and daughters, and they don't want this creeping into their life. And do you think a memo like this from the Secretary of State just is like thrown in the trash can? No, bureaucrats take it seriously. Yeah. And so that's why it seeps further and further into the government. You know, Greg, I don't know if you remember this, but there was a commercial. It was for the CIA, and a woman comes out. She says, I'm a woman of color. I'm a mom. I'm a cisgender millennial who's been diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. Do you remember that one?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, and she was advertising for the CIA. I mean, military recruitment right now is at an all-time low, the lowest since 41.
Yeah, the military is a killing machine, not a feeling machine. By the way, the response to a lot of this misgendering stuff will be, come on, it's not a big deal, just be nice. But the subject matter itself is trivial, but it has an opportunity cost. Time, effort, and attention is spent to this trivial stuff. There are people that spend hours on these memos, and they spend money on this therapy, and there's a direct path from that to deeper, more long-term opportunity costs. You know, it indulges non-scientific, non-biological decisions that affect not just the long-term unity of a military, but long-term physical and mental health of people. For the longest time, we were told, longest time being like the last 10 years perhaps, that restricting trans surgery would put minors at risk for suicide. Mm-hmm. So if you argued about giving them drugs or doing surgery, you had blood on your hands. The reason why that argument was so important was that it silenced people. You couldn't come out and say, like, this doesn't make sense. Oh, then you want kids to die. Now, all this research is coming out that it's all bunk. There was no research behind it. In fact, there's no difference in suicide. In fact, generally, post-op, trans has a much higher suicide rate than the general population. But the point was, this is all part of a bigger mosaic to keep people quiet. So if you question, like the 90-year-old woman who was a volunteer for the Multiple Sclerosis Society asked about what pronouns were, she lost her job. She'd been there for 60 years volunteering. The idea is that if we tell you that what you're doing could cost lives by misgendering, you won't do it. But it's over now.
All right, Jessica, tell us why we're wrong.
Okay. Well, I think that we've gone a lot of different places with this, but I think the trans suicide rate is not about the operation and the implications of that. It's about the bullying and the attacks and the quality of life for trans people in the country.
They looked at that. I mean, we can talk about it.
We can, yeah.
They looked at that.
Mm-hmm. And everything was hunky-dory for trans people.
No. I'm just calling out the lie. I'm calling out the lie.
Okay. I am one of these people who thinks if you lead an organization that has tens of thousands of employees in it, that there have to be certain decisions taken that will make the few feel better. And I'm not saying that I am someone who has not been guilty of violating some of these rules. I certainly say ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, brave men and women, and all of these things. But when you have that many people working for you, it is important to send a message that you do care about every individual within that organization. Does that mean some of it goes too far? Absolutely. But does it mean also that certain people want to make an argument that things like this are what are destroying our country, per se, or our military?
It's compulsory language.
You think someone is getting fired for saying the brave men and women who died?
I just gave you an example.
The multiple sclerosis lady?
And it's well documented.
I'm talking about out of the State Department, which is what this actually is. I think that's ridiculous. And if you told 100 people that, probably 100, even the person who decided to make that, lives with regret about it.
You know what? If every one of us who ran an organization were concerned about every person's sensitivities, we wouldn't be involved in the mission of the organization. We'd be just a feel-good organization that effectually does nothing. So that's the end of it.
It's a luxury problem that you can have if nothing depends on your professional work.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.